Hello everyone, today is 2nd of September, now it's about 9 o'clock in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for a day in which I'll share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. And there are quite a few very significant developments and news that I'd like to share with you for this moment. And I will start with short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. First of all, Pokrovsk direction, which is of course most active nowadays, and we have updated Russian armed forces during the previous 12 to 24 hours, established control over the Galicinovka settlement, over the Dalinovka settlement. Also reports are coming in that Russian forces established control over the Lisovka settlement and entered the Ukrainsk settlement. So significant progress on the southern flank of Pokrovsk sector. And if we zoom out a little bit, as you can see, distance between forward Russian positions from Krasnogorovka or Georgievka-Maximilianovka area towards forward positions of Russian troops in Galicinovka, let's say, is shortening on daily basis, and Kiev regime forces in this artillery pocket probably have a maximum several days left to evacuate. Otherwise, probably they will get encircled, and then they will only have two options: fight to their end or to lay down arms and surrender. When it comes to Pokrovsk direction, Russian troops continue their offensive operations in Selidovo. This is a central part of the Pokrovsk sector, central direction. And the latest reports are that Russian troops basically are controlling now at least 30 to 40% of Selidovo settlement, which is also significant progress. And Russian troops further improving positions in direction of Mirgorod, settlement, and forward units already are conducting operations on the southern outskirts of the Mirgorod. Most likely at this point we are talking about Russian DRGs that are basically checking how reliable defense lines of the Kiev regime in this area are, and in a couple of days time we should expect a significant local scale offensive towards Mirgorod due to very rapid advances of the Russian forces in Pokrovsk direction. Of course, right now, in my reading of the big picture, it is necessary for Russian armed forces to take a little pause, build a new supply and support lines on liberated territories, created additional logistical hubs to continue advances and to conduct offensive operations on Mirnograd and Pokrovsk, first of all, because this is a relatively larger towns, and of course logistics will play a huge role in during the operation to liberate these settlements from Western occupying regime of Zelensky. Also, by the way, we have significant updates about southern Donetsk sector of the front line, and for example, yesterday reports were coming in that the Russian armed forces were conducting offensive operations in Ugledar direction from two sides. This is Ugledar, and on my Telegram channel I shared the video. This video, by the way. So quite intense shelling of the positions of the Kiev regime's armed forces in Ugledar, obviously. And reports were that Russian troops simultaneously with this artillery preparation were conducting local scale offensive operations in Ugledar direction from two sides. And I don't know, I didn't see any details on progress of Russian offensive, but operations itself in Ugledar direction definitely not comes as a surprise, because I reported, and many other channels, that after liberation of Konstantinovka on South Donetsk sector and the further progress of the Russian armed forces in Vadiana area, it does make all the sense. Basically, it's easy to predict that Russian troops will increase pressure on Kiev regime's forces in Ugledar direction, and most likely will try to at least partially encircle this settlement and establish fire control on logistical lines of their local garrison of the Kiev regime in Ugledar. And they're due to significant rapid progress of the Russian armed forces in relatively large towns like New York, for example. One may argue that during the special military operation, Russian armed forces worked out new tactics, how to deal with the strongholds of their enemy forces, especially how to deal with the so-called citadels, high-rise apartment buildings in settlements. And if you take a look at their Ugledar, by the way, I mean, it's almost entirely high-rise apartment buildings. And of course, Kiev regime will try to hold on to this town as long as they can. But well, Russian troops established control over the New York quite in a relatively short time, isn't it? So also Russian troops are advancing in Donetsk direction, and I guess this additional experience how to operate with when your enemies are in these so-called citadels, this additional knowledge will allow Russian troops to basically liberate Ugledar in relatively short time when final assault operations began. So in any ways, significant developments are taking place in Ugledar direction, also on southern Donetsk sector. No reports about crucial changes on Chisovyar direction, although Russian troops, by the way, further improving their positions in Donetsk, and we have additional confirmations that Druzhba settlement and Pivnichная settlement are under full Russian control, and Russian troops basically already are conducting offensive operations inside the Donetsk. Although speed of offensive, of course, a little bit slow now. Yet again, I believe this is due to necessity to establish new supply and support line, because advances of the Russian troops in New York Donetsk direction, Pokrovsk direction was very significant, and of course it will take some time now to rearm, reinforce, and then to continue offensive operations. And we also have, by the way, reports that Russian troops established control of the Vyemka settlement on Seversk direction. Recently, several times we were hearing reports that Vyemka was liberated, then probably Russian troops were withdraw from this settlement. And now, yet again, we are receiving reports about the settlement being liberated. Also, by the way, contradicting reports are coming in about Ivano-Darivka. This is also Seversk direction. According to some reports, Kiev regime forces managed to reclaim this territory, re-establish control over this territory. But Russian sources are reporting that this settlement is still under Russian control, and Russian troops actually even advance further from this area. So difficult to say what is going on on the ground, because after all I'm not there. But in any case, initiative is definitely in Russian hands on all sectors of the front line, and Seversk direction is definitely not exception. No crucial changes on Kupiansk direction. Last big news we received from this area was liberation of the Sinkovka settlement. Of course, many members of our community are familiar with Sinkovka, because battles for that town, due to very difficult terrain, was continuing quite a long time. And also Russian troops established control over their Pishchana settlement and further improved their positions, which is also definitely big deal, because Pishchana was a stronghold of the Kiev regime in this direction. When it comes to northern sectors, northern part of Kharkov direction, Liptsi, Volchansk area, no reports about crucial changes in this direction. Most likely because Russian troops from these northern sectors were at least partially redirected towards Kursk region to deal with their invading forces in Kursk salient. And lately, many members of our community probably noticed that even pro-Ukrainian channels no longer reporting about any progress of the Kiev regime in Kursk region of the Russian Federation. This salient is definitely sealed now. Kiev regime forces are trapped, and the Russian Defense Ministry on daily basis sharing with public updated information about losses of the Kiev regime in this direction. And let me give you latest updates that comes from yesterday, by the way. So according to Russian Defense Ministry, yesterday's report, today's update is not yet available, but for 1st of September, Russian Defense Ministry reported that during the previous 24 hours, Kiev regime lost about 360 military personnel in the Kursk region and 23 different type of military vehicles. Overall, since the beginning of invasion of the Kursk region, according to Russian Defense Ministry, Kiev regime lost 8,500 military personnel, approximately 80 tanks, 69 armored personnel carriers, 37 infantry fighting vehicles, 249 motor vehicles, 537 armored, different type of armored vehicles, personnel carriers, trucks, and so on. Also 62 artillery, field artillery pieces, 16 MLRS systems, multi-launch rocket systems, including 4 HIMARS MLRS systems, also 5 air defense systems, 13 radio electronic warfare systems, 6 radars, counter battery radars, and also radars for of the air defense systems, and many more military equipment. Huge numbers, isn't it? Huge numbers. 8,500 military personnel has been lost by Kiev regime in the Kursk direction, according to Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation. And as we all know, Russian Defense Ministry is quite conservative in its estimations, and therefore I think Kiev regime already lost in Kursk salient area at least 10,000 military personnel killed and wounded, which is basically one may argue which means that Kiev regime's at least 4 brigades already being demilitarized. And process continues, by the way. Process continues. And as I said from very beginning, Russian armed forces will use this Kursk salient as a trap for the Kiev regime for a couple of more weeks, and then probably we will see final push to clear this territory from the invading forces, and then most likely we will see Russian advances in Sumy region, which is for now controlled by Kiev regime, and I expect entire this region, by the way, to be liberated from a Western occupying regime. That being said, let's talk about some other news now, and for example, let's start with this one. RIA Novosti reported, based on reports from Ukraine, from Kiev controlled territory, that this morning there was explosions in several regions of the Kiev controlled territory. I reported about it on my Telegram this morning, and for example, missile strikes on military and logistics infrastructure of the Zelensky's regime continues, and explosions this morning was heard in Kharkiv, Poltava, Kryvyi Rog, Kiev, and Borispol areas. Borispol is in the Kiev region, and there is airfield, by the way, in Borispol, as many members of our community know. I shared some videos of these strikes. This is a video from Kiev, by the way. Some huge explosion you can see there. No precise information what exactly was targeted, but on one of the sources I see statement of Mayor of Kiev, Klitschko, who said that as a result of strike on one of their industrial facilities there was a fire, and I guess not just one industrial area was targeted, but yet again no precise information for this moment. If any updates on that, of course I will share additional information on my Telegram and during the second updates. Also, dear friends, Kiev regime, as they always do, retaliate by shelling residential areas of the Belgorod city of the Russia, I shared some videos of that, and latest reports were that Kiev regime forces targeted basically kindergarten in Belgorod area, and this is the pictures, by the way. It was early morning, and therefore there was no kids in kindergarten, but this strike itself definitely demonstrates true face of the Kiev regime, by the way. They knew what they were doing. They were targeting kindergarten, right? But they just don't care. And that's why I always say Zelensky and his criminal associates are mass murderers and the terrorists and should be prosecuted as such. And it is a shame on Europe, by the way, and shame on collective West countries, on US, Canada, and the rest of the collective West countries, that they are in active support of these mass murderers and the terrorists. Also, RIA Novosti is reporting that Russian armed forces, Russian aerospace forces, basically received additional new batch of their Su-34 frontline bombers that definitely proved themselves to be very significant, very capable plane, probably one of the best frontline bombers of our time. Also, by the way, Vzglyad newspaper is reporting that according to Russian Foreign Ministry, Russian nuclear doctrine will be adapted to new realities, and during this process, experience of the special military operation and Western escalatory steps will be taken in account. And according to foreign deputy of the foreign minister Sergei Rabkov, process of updating Russian nuclear doctrine is in advanced stage now, and shortly, most likely, new doctrine will be adopted, which is definitely important stuff. RT is reporting that Polish Prime Minister threatens to block Ukraine's EU bid. This is interesting, by the way. This is interesting. So let's go through this news. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has threatened to block Ukraine's bid to join the EU unless it bans to Warsaw demands on the World War II era Volyn massacre, a mass killing of the Poles by Ukrainian nationalists. Tusk made the pledge in the wake of the political scandal in Poland following a disastrous visit by Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba, who made multiple highly controversial statements on the history of the two countries. Ukrainians will, and then quote, by the way, Ukrainians will, with all our respect and our support for their military efforts, must realize that joining the EU is also joining the political and historical culture. So until there is a respect for these standards on the part of Ukraine, Ukraine will not become a member of the European Union, European family, Tusk stated. The Prime Minister condemned Kuleba's, and Kuleba is of course Foreign Minister of Kiev regime. So Polish Prime Minister condemned Kuleba's unequivocally negative remarks. Ukraine, one way or another, will have to meet Poland's expectations, Tusk insisted. And Kuleba delivered his ill-advised remarks on Wednesday while speaking in the northern Polish city of Olsztyn, while promising not to oppose exhumation to help understand the Volyn massacre, a brutal act of mass murder in which Ukrainian nationalists slaughtered up to 100,000 Poles between 1943 and 1945. The diplomat urged two nations to leave history to historians and not to dig up the bad things that the Poles did to Ukrainians and Ukrainians to Poles. Militants with the Ukrainian insurgent army, this is Ukrainian Nazis, by the way, and the fascists that collaborated with the Nazi Germany during the Second World War, and the organization of Ukrainian nationalists, OUN, killed at least 60,000 ethnic Poles between the regions of Volyn and Eastern Galicia, which currently belongs to Ukraine. Some historians estimate that the toll is even higher, suggesting that up to 120,000 victims were murdered by Ukrainian Nazis. While Warsaw was recognized the massacre as a genocide of Poles, modern Ukraine has been celebrating the perpetrators as a freedom fighters and the national heroes. Kuleba also invoked the 1947 Operation Vistula, forced resettlement of the Ukrainians from southern eastern Poland to the west of the country. The controversial action was aimed at the destruction of Ukrainians from southeastern Poland to the west of country. The controversial action was aimed at the destruction of local Ukrainian neo-Nazi holdouts, as the resentment deprived them of their support of the locals. Some 140,000 people were deported during their operation and become scattered in the west of the country. Kiev's top diplomat also brought some of his own demands for Polish authorities, such as respecting the memory of Ukrainians who had been forcibly expelled from Ukrainian territories. The remark was extremely poorly received in the host country, as some perceived it as a thinly veiled hint at the potential territorial demands. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry had to step in, insisting Kuleba never meant it like that, merely describing the region where a compact Ukrainian community has been living before the deportation as the Ukrainian territory. So as you can see, dear friends, things are heating up between Warsaw and Kiev, understandably so, because after all, we all understand that it's only a matter of time and Poland will claim significant parts of western Ukraine that used to be part of Poland before Second World War. And of course, Warsaw Polish political elites will use any excuse to escalate with their Kiev regime and therefore lay down ground for future actions, including establishing control over the parts of western Ukraine that used to belong to Poland. So that's how I see this information, by the way. And also, it is quite frustrating, isn't it, that in one hand, Polish leadership is acknowledging crimes of the Ukrainian Nazis that slaughtered tens of thousands of Poles, and not just Poles, but also Jewish people, also Russian people, Belarusian people, just about everybody, by the way. And they were slaughtering even Ukrainians that were opposing their criminal actions, those Ukrainian neo-Nazis. And it is, bit frustrating that in one hand Warsaw is recognizing crimes of Ukrainian Nazis. They know perfectly well that Ukrainian Nazis, people with this crazy criminal ideology, are in charge now basically in Ukraine and actively used by Washington and London as their proxies against Russia. And still Polish leadership is in support of these Nazis, and they are providing them with the weapons, with munition. Because I don't know, man, because probably hate towards Russians is much stronger in Polish so-called elites than respect to their own history and to their own people. That's the only explanation I can come up with. That Polish leadership just too sick with Russophobia, and therefore, they cannot overcome this this hatred towards us. And therefore they are willing to support against Russia even the Nazis, Ukrainian Nazis that slaughtered tens of thousands of Poles. It's a shame on Polish society that they are allowing such criminals, such disgusting individuals like Tusk, Sikorski and rest of the garbage to be in position of elites in this great country, by the way, Poland. Let's continue. TASS news agency is reporting that, Trump spoke about Ukraine partially, according to reports. He was on Fox News, I believe. Yes, he was on Fox News, and he spoke about military readiness of the U.S. armed forces, and he spoke that U.S. is basically demilitarized because U.S. is providing too much weapons and munition two countries worldwide, including Ukraine, and therefore US itself now don't really have enough stockpile if anything happens. And Trump also noticed that Xi Jinping, Chinese leader, probably is, definitely not regretting, let's say, when he is receiving information that US don't really has a stockpile to conduct any large-scale military operation. Well, Trump is exaggerating, most likely. I guess US has at least some minimum stockpile of their artillery shells or missiles. After all, US didn't provide everything they have to Kiev regime. But Trump also has a point, isn't it? Trump also has a point. US is spending too much money on its inadequate foreign policy, which includes the presence of US militaries in 800 foreign bases, by the way, over 800 foreign bases, which costs, of course, fortune to US taxpayers. And simultaneously, to maintain those bases, US has no option but to supply host countries with whatever weapons not whatever weapons, but with significant volume of weapons and munition also. So Trump definitely has a point. Nothing to be said about Ukraine. US should never get involved in this conflict, and US political elites or Western ruling class should never even think about waging proxy war or provoking proxy war against Russia, because naturally Western states or countries of the collective West and Russia should be allies, by the way. Or if ally is too strong a word, then at least our country should not be in hostile position towards each other, right? So it was a fatal mistake on part of Western ruling class when they provoke this war, when they basically try to isolate Russia and distance themselves from Russia. Western collective West definitely lost by doing so. Lost politically, lost economically, and lost in terms of security also, 100%. And basically, by doing so, Western ruling class further improve geopolitical positions of the number one competitor, as they see it, which is China, right? So something has to be done in the collective West, because it is so obvious that current leadership there is too inadequate, too unprofessional, and are leading collective West towards disaster. I mean, this is just so obvious, by the way, and should be obvious for everybody. Anyways, let's continue. RT is reporting that, well, Russian president gave the interview to Mongolian media before his visit to Mongolia, which should take place tomorrow, I believe, on 3rd of September. And let's go through this report of RT also. Russian media are trying to convey Moscow's point of view on global issues and processes, but Western states are hiding from the truth by dismissing every inconvenient fact as a propaganda. President Vladimir Putin has said, and he definitely has a point, isn't it? Our friends from Western states and majority of our communities from collective West countries, I mean, you tell me, dear friends, if Putin is not correct here. Any inconvenient fact in the West is dismissed by local Western authorities as and designated as some sort of propaganda, Russian propaganda usually, which is crazy, isn't it? Instead of dealing with the issues, they are calling everything propaganda, which is crazy, by the way, which is crazy. How are you going to deal with any issues if you are not acknowledging them, right? And if you are calling everything that you don't like propaganda, this is crazy. That's why I'm saying, by the way, Western ruling class is so incompetent that they are definitely existential threat for entire world and humanity. Because after all, we should keep in mind that they are in charge of nuclear states also, like US in the collective West, like US, France, and UK. And who knows what those crazies gonna do, man. Let's continue. President Putin gave a written interview to the Mongolian Onodor newspaper ahead of his visit to the country on Monday. Among other things, he was asked about the freedom of the press and how the West can champion it while banning and suppressing Russian media. And then the answer here, quote, almost all Western countries where our journalists try to work are creating obstacles for them, banning Russian television channels and directly censoring our media and online resources, Putin said, noting that this obviously runs counter to the democratic principles of freedom of speech and the free flow of information. So the West, which claims to be a model of freedom, has opted to hide from inconvenient facts and their truth by launching a blatant bullying campaign against Russian journalists and indiscriminately labeling them as a Kremlin propagandists. The Russian leader went on to say that pluralism and openness in the information space are vital for society, and that in Russia the mass media are free as guaranteed by the constitution. Well, some may argue that Russian media is especially state-run media, state-financed media, even though they are doing some good journalism. Fact itself that they are state-financed, of course, raises questions, and therefore one may always take any information from this state-run media with a pinch of salt. But simultaneously, there are so many other platforms, media platforms, by the way, that have nothing to do with the state. For example, Vzгляд newspaper. They have nothing to do with the state. For example, also Interfax, I believe, is independent. Kommersant, by the way, I'm quite often using sharing information from the independent media also. Kommersant, Interfax, Lenter, they are part of some media conglomerates, but not state-run media. And I believe, by the way, of course, propaganda is propaganda, and propaganda elements can be seen in Russian state-run media also, as you can see it in almost all Western media outlets without any exceptions, really. And in the West, if you want to hear any true news, you have to go to alternative media, right, on internet. Here in Russia, media is in better position, maybe, although yet again, I think alternative media is gaining popularity here in Russia also. And there are huge channels, by the way, huge media projects on internet that have millions of subscribers and millions of views on tens of millions even on regular basis. Although in general, I spoke about this once before, and I will repeat myself if I may. I really believe that Russian journalists in state-run media or independent media are much more qualified, much more educated than Western journalists, by the way. I truly believe in that. You can take any 10 journalists from, let's say, Russian NTV channel, and you can take any 10 journalists from CNN and do some games, by the way, intellectual games. And I'm quite sure Russian journalists will decimate, by the way, journalists from CNN or MSNBC or BBC, by the way, don't really matter. I truly believe that our journalists are much more educated, which is important, by the way, because we are talking about journalism and how you're going to report about anything if you have no knowledge as much as possible. That's what journalists do. You have to learn as much as you can about as many topics as you can to be, qualified journalist, right? But anyways, let's continue. In any ways, by the way, nowadays we are living in such a difficult or strange times that any news from anywhere should be taken with a pinch of salt and checked and rechecked. That's the only way to go forward, I guess. RT is, by the way. Oh, before I continue, dear friends, let me take a second and advertise my own small media project, which is independent one, by the way, and that's why on every video I'm noting that this small media project of mine with several channels on YouTube, Rumble, Telegram is completely subscriber funded, and if you like my work, if you think my channels deserve to exist in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support with donation through PayPal or Boosty. This is Boosty platform, by the way. PayPal, you all know PayPal, and you can also donate through Boosty, or, by the way, you can subscribe to my Patreon page. This is my Patreon page. As you can see, plenty of bonus videos, by the way, about many topics, and there will be even more videos to come, by the way. I have some plans. So my Patreon page and Boosty page also, by the way, you can subscribe on Boosty too. Hopefully will become much more interesting. I'm gonna do my best as my thank for support to our communities to provide significant volume of additional content. And all the links, by the way, are under this video in description box and in the pinned comment. I was hoping that we will reach, our community on Patreon would reach 200 before end of summer, but we did not. It's only 161 of us right now on Patreon. So therefore, I mean, I hope you will consider, if you are not subscriber on Patreon, I hope you will consider to join. And if you have any issues with Patreon, by the way, for whatever reason, you can subscribe to my channel on Boosty. Since I activated Boosty platform, I'm sharing all videos, by the way, on both platforms, on both my pages, on Patreon and Boosty, all extra content. On Patreon, subscription, monthly subscription starts from $5, and it's then up to you. Level of support you can choose 5, 10, 20, whatever, 50 or more, and the same is on Boosty, although on Boosty monthly subscription starts from 500 rubles, which is a little bit more than $5, not even 6, or maybe around $6 a month. It all depends on exchange rate, of course. So all the links under this video in description box and in the pinned comment. I hope at least before end of this year our community on Patreon will reach 200. Hopefully, let's see. And it is very important because you never know about donations, isn't it? One day you may have donation through PayPal or Boosty, other day you don't. But on subscription, these monthly subscriptions give you more or less good understanding of the funds that you are operating with for a month. So it does make work much easier, obviously. And of course, many thanks to all the members of our community who supported and who continues to support my work and this project. Truly grateful. And let's continue now. RT is reporting that widespread protests rock Israel. So tens of thousands of protesters flooded the streets of Israel on Sunday, demanding immediate ceasefire deal from the government after the bodies of 6 hostages were discovered in Gaza tunnels the day before. Israel's largest trade union has called for a nationwide strike on Monday to shut down the entire Israeli economy, with the rights organizers urging a hit to pressure the government into signing a hostage ceasefire deal. Their Sunday demonstrations are said to be the largest since Israel launched its war on Hamas in response to their October 6-7 attack, which left around 1,200 Israelis dead and 200 taken hostage. Organizers described the rally as an endless sea of protesters, estimating a crowd of 300,000 people in Tel Aviv and additional 200,000 in other cities across the country. So huge protests, by the way, huge protests are taking place in Israel. But yet again, will Netanyahu and his government listen to their own citizens? I don't think so. I don't think so, but we will see. We will see. RT is reporting that right-wing party claims historic victory in German state elections. This is also big, by the way, big news. The Alternative for Germany, AfD, appears has won its first state elections since the right-wing party's establishment in 2013. According to official preliminary results, the AfD has claimed 32.8% of the vote in Sunday's legislative election in the state of Thuringia. This is regional elections, by the way, in Germany we are talking about. So in state of Thuringia, in the eastern part of Germany, the Conservative Christian Democratic Union, SDU, party is expected to come in second with the 23.6% of the ballots. Their two parties were also neck in neck in their neighboring state of Saxony, according to exit polls, which with the SDU and the AfD claiming 32 and 31.5% of the vote respectively. None of the members of Germany's ruling traffic light coalition, the Social Democratic Party, SPD, or Chancellor Olaf Scholz, their Free Democratic Party, FDP, and the Greens were able to make it to the top three in either of the states that I mentioned. This Saxony one, and another one is Thuringia, by the way. So this is big deal, because it seems like at least in eastern Germany, people are sick and tired of these crazy politicians that are ruining Germany's economy and social fabric of the Germany, and more and more people are now voting for this alternative party. Alternative parties, by the way, they are not just this AfD, but there are other parties also, relatively new parties that are gaining more and more support, which is definitely or possibly good indicators about things to come or changes to come to Germany. And who knows, maybe sometime in the future, by the way, German people will reclaim their own country. Because right now, Germany is run by occupying regime, right? Washington's and London's occupying regime, that's what it is, really. So, who knows, maybe not necessarily in next several years, but maybe in foreseeable future, German people will manage to put in power politicians and parties that will focus on Germany and German society's main or top interest, best interests. It is a possibility, by the way. I'm quite sure Washington and London gonna be terrified by this news, by the way, because more Germans will wake up. Less control Washington and London will have over the fate or future of the German people and their country. So this is a very big deal, as far as I understand, by the way. Our friends from Germany can share their own opinion. Of course, it will be interesting to learn what Germans think on these developments. Vzglyad newspaper is also reporting that General Staff of Iran made statement about final statement, basically, about recent crash of their helicopter of the Iran's President Raisi, and according to this information, helicopter crash occurred due to poor weather conditions, due to which helicopter basically collided with a hill, and As a result, everybody on the board of the helicopter was killed, including President of Iran, Raisi. So I guess this is final statement on this topic. This is a conclusion that investigators come up with. And when it comes to helicopter crashes, by the way, unfortunately, there was a helicopter crash in Kamchatka region of the Russian Federation. As I reported earlier, internal tourism and tourism in general in Russia is developing very rapidly, and Kamchatka region of the Russian Federation in Far East is becoming more and more popular due to its amazing landscape, amazing landscape. By the way, it's active volcanoes there, and there are valleys and geysers, and I mean it's wonderful there. It's wonderful there, and there are more and more tourists are visiting Kamchatka region. And unfortunately, Mi-8 with the tourists crashed her, and Interfax is reporting that no one survived this crash, and at this point at least 18 bodies of the passengers and the pilots of the crew members of the helicopter have been found. Tragedy, of course. There was 19 passengers on the board and 3 crew members. So operations are in process to find everybody. So yes, tragedy, unfortunately, most likely due to poor weather conditions. Helicopter crashed with the mountain, and no one survived. Interfax is reporting that, and by the way, pilot was very experienced according to reports that I see, a very experienced pilot, but unfortunately tragedies like that happened. Very sad. Interfax is reporting that more than 20 foreigners have been arrested in Moscow, on southern eastern part of Moscow, because of the due to clashes between these foreigners between each other. And even though in this news there are no particular information from which countries these foreigners were, probably these arrested people were citizens of Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. Quite often citizens of these countries are fighting each other, which is in mass, by the way, when 10, 20, 30 people are engaged in a fight, which is crazy, but unfortunately things like that happened. And well, 23 of them were arrested in southeastern part of Moscow as a result of one of that kind of clashes between citizens of these countries. But yet again, in this particular news, no country is mentioned, citizens of which countries these people were, but usually, I mean, quite often, unfortunately, there are videos circulating on internet when citizens of Uzbekistan and Tajikistan are fighting each other. And this is migrants, but work migrants. They are coming in to work, to make some money, to support their families in their native countries. And for whatever reason, they're quite often fighting, which is unfortunate. Really, something has to be done, because this is crazy about it. And I'm quite sure work is done on this, but issues like that cannot be resolved in 1 or 2 days, man. It's just too complex, isn't it? RIA Novosti is reporting that France in 2024 doubled basically its imports of the Russian SPG, and significant volumes of this SPG used by France, and significant volume is re-exported by France. So French businesses are making money either way. We have now statistics for first quarter of this year, and according to this information from French companies, increase imports of the Russian liquefied natural gas from 2 to 4.4 billion cubic meters in just first quarter of this year. So in one hand, by the way, EU is sanctioning Russia, the Russian energy sector including, and just about everything and everybody that they can think of. And in other hand, we have this information that France and many other countries, by the way, in Europe, one way or another, but managing to still buy Russian energy, and not just for domestic use, but for re-export also, right? And France is no exception, and numbers are quite significant, isn't it? Just in first quarter, France doubled their imports from 2 to 4.4 billion cubic meters, man. It's significant. And by the way, this news should not come as a surprise, because we all understand that there is no way EU member states can completely ignore Russian energy sector. It's just not happening. There is just not enough alternatives on the market, right? So that's why it is so critical for citizens of European states to do something about the crazy elites, because it is so obvious that they are, due to their Russophobia, due to their crazy ideology, they are destroying economies of their own countries, and also social fabric, because whenever there is some economical downfall, usually first hit goes for social fabric, right? RT is reporting that global warming to boost Russian GDP, according to reports. This is also quite interesting. So Russia's GDP could grow by 1.2 trillion rubles, which is about 13 billion US dollars, if their average annual temperature across the country rises by 1 degree Celsius, according to new research. The agriculture and forestry sectors stand to benefit the most from global warming. The experts who conducted this study concluded, which is, well, quite interesting, isn't it? Quite interesting. Well, Russia already has, huge forestry, obviously, and their agricultural sector is developing big time and very rapidly, and Russia is already breadbasket of this world. But give it another 15, 20, 30 years, and Russia will be number one food supplier to this world. I have no doubts about that. The agricultural sector has a huge potential here in Russia, due to vastness of the Russian Federation, isn't it? So therefore, I'm not at all surprised to hear this news that, well, if temperatures will rise, of course, it will, first of all, benefit agricultural sector, although we are talking about just 1 degree, by the way. If temperatures will rise globally 1 degree, that's gonna be big issue, by the way. That's gonna be a big issue for entire world. Nothing to be said about global increase of the temperature for like 2-3 degrees. That would be a disaster, by the way. But well, it is what it is. That's the news that I had prepared for this first update. Hopefully you will find this video interesting, informative, and if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything, any topic. This is the only way we can at least try to influence algorithm to reach a wider audience. And dear friends, I'm forgetting almost always to mention that my channel is not monetized on YouTube, but it is monetized on Rumble. And if it's not principle for you on which platform to listen to update or watch, if you can, or whenever you can, please watch updates on my Rumble channel and subscribe to my Rumble if you are not subscribed. Link is under this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. Yes, help me promote my Rumble channel if you can, because it's our main reserve line of communication, isn't it? Together with the Telegram channel. And finally, if you if you, as I already said, if you want to support my work, if you like my channels, please consider to support. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Have a wonderful day and take care.